What I got? Hopefully I got a message, right? Anyway, Cleophas, thank you so much for getting up here and sharing. It is an honor and a privilege to be able. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. This isn't like that. My name is Sarah, and I am a grateful recovering addict. We all get nervous and forget. All right. So, can you guys hear me okay? Back row. All you people in TV land. My name is Sarah, and I am a grateful recovering addict and alcoholic. Depends on where I am, what I say, but let's just face it, my drug of choice was more, and mostly more of what you've got. I did not like living in my own skin. Sometimes I still don't. Sometimes I still feel, a little uncomfortable, and I just embrace the uncomfortable. I just say, hey, I'm Sarah. I got to love me because, that's just who I am. And I always thought I was pretty fascinating little girl. Man, I remember just sitting in my front yard and I said, oh my God, I feel like I'm an alien. I just did not feel like I fit in with anybody in my neighborhood. All the kids called me Shiny Hiney. And, well, that's a funny little story. I had a red tricycle that was a hand-me-down. And when I got it, I decided I was going to paint it pink with pink nail polish back in the 80s. They had the very glittery Wet n Wild. And I went and I painted that tricycle pink. And I was so proud of it. And I rode it down the street to where my sister and all her friends were playing. And I was like, look at what I did with the tricycle you gave me. And I got up and I was like, Vanna White like this. And they all started laughing. And my sister's like, Shiny Hiney. Don't go to that neighborhood anymore very much. But I felt like an alien. I never felt like I belonged. I never felt like I belonged in my family, with people that I went to school with, no matter where I was. So like, not to get too biblical, but there is this passage in the Bible where Paul says, I can abound with plenty and I can abound with little, and I never felt like I could abound anywhere until the first time I got drunk. And I felt like I belonged. Everything was funny. I was funny. You were funny. I didn't care. You obviously had a problem, but I didn't care. It felt great. I was 7 years old. It was Thanksgiving. And I remember going around and getting a little bit of champagne from all the adults who were already sloshed, because I come from a good old-fashioned alcoholic family. And so it was very easy for me to fall into that pattern of behavior. It was okay for us to drink water and wine. It was okay for us to drink wine at a restaurant, because I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. Anybody ever heard of that place? What's the first thing you think of when you think of New Orleans? What's Mardi Gras? That's where I grew up. And so, and by the way, AA is huge out there. Huge. I loved going to AA when I couldn't find somebody who wanted to go to Bourbon Street with me, so I could pick somebody up and go there. For years, I went to meetings thinking it was the greatest social club for antisocial people. I had no concept of my world around me. I was in so much pain, but I couldn't feel it because I was too busy getting drunk. And then whenever people started telling me, I don't want you coming into my bar. You can't have your son back. Get out of my house. And my family completely rejecting me, even though they were all like functioning alcoholics, which by the way is a bunch of BS. It just means they're alcoholics who know how to hold on to a job, but they don't have a family because their wives divorced them. They don't have kids because their dadzilla or momzilla. When I was 10 years old, my parents got divorced in this manner. They sent me to Honduras with my nanny for a month, and I came home and my mom had moved out. It was nothing but pain. But I did perceive my childhood as being something that was fun, because I always did what I felt like would feel good. And that's what I did my whole entire life. I went through every moment of my life seeking out the more fun thing to do. Can you imagine why I would choose that? It was because it was easy. You know, I spent 36 years of my life seeking out what was easiest for me to do. I didn't want to face my pain. I didn't want to face rejection. So whenever I got kicked out of the bars in Bourbon Street and all that because they didn't want to watch me lush out, I just came out to California. Imagine my surprise when you stop selling booze at 2 o'clock in the morning. So what do I do then? Started smoking meth. It was great. You know, like when in Rome, and you guys embraced me and you loved me as long as I had money or something to offer. And the funny thing is some of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my life were the people I met in active addiction, because they never kicked me out. They never let me down until I got into recovery and I learned what it was like to not let me down. When I got into recovery, it was my 13th rehab. My 13th rehab. Let me tell you what happened to get me here. I was on probation, which, by the way, I got on probation for felony transportation of a controlled substance and distribution of a controlled substance. i.e., I was in a hotel room with a few baggies that had a crystalline substance. I took the charge. Why? Because I had to get out of jail and get loaded, right? Because we can't sit in jail for an indefinite time to beat a charge. No. Anyway, and then I absconded from probation for 3.5 years. I turned myself in and I started going to my probation appointments, but I kept getting loaded. Tried to time it so that, I was smoking meth until like 3 days before I thought they would call my I was spaceship. And so I had to like wait and call every day and hope that they wouldn't call. And then I'd be like, oh yeah, she's not going to call it. Be like, you could feel it when you're a probation officer, And I thought I was like smooth all the time, and I kept failing my test. And my probation officer sent me to a program, and I went there, and I was magnificent. I was on fire. I got my PhD in rehab. They wanted me to come to graduation and speak because I was so inspiring and so wonderful, and I just breezed through it. Guess what I did on the way home? Got high. Because I was just going back to right where I was with the boyfriend who was doing the stuff that I wasn't supposed to do. But another thing happened whenever I got home, and that was I got pregnant. And my probation officer said to me, "You're on felony probation, and I'm not putting up with this malarkey. If you test positive and lose that baby to DCFS, I'm putting your ass in prison." And I said, "Oh, Lord, I don't want to go to prison, But then, I kind of was in a prison, right? The active addiction. Anybody identify with that? Like, you can be free, walking around, and you feel so trapped because you got to get to the liquor store before the DTs get so bad that you vomit and fall over. You remember that walking, holding on to walls? That was my experience walking into detox, was holding on to the walls all beat up. Yeah, it was a great feeling. Those are the memories I hold on to. I don't talk much about like all the fun that I had, because I realize now that that wasn't fun. Losing my son in the hospital to foster care, because not that I tested positive, but I was with a doofus who went and told the social worker that he was smoking meth and I was going to kill myself. And I lost my kid to DCFS foster care. Hey, guys, I'm not upset about that anymore. Do you know why? Because it brought me to this point. It brought me to my knees the first day I was in detox. Somebody came up to me and said, you can do 12 steps all you want to. You can go to rehab, get your PhD in this shit. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you do not have God, you're not going nowhere. So I got on my knees and I said, okay, look, we have not had a great relationship. You have let me down in ways that I could not imagine. I am here by myself and I want to get this. I want to be sober. I want to have a family. Please give me my family back, keep me sober, and I will follow your direction for the rest of my life. I got up the next morning and I wasn't shaking anymore. This is like with that spiritual experience that very few people get, right? And I had stopped shaking. My blood pressure was back to normal. I said, no more medicine. And they said, well, we got to keep you for 5 days. I said, that's fine by me. Do you? I'm going to be fine. And then I went on to a program for 90 days. And in that program, I didn't have so much fun. It wasn't so easy this time. I struggled. I got into fights with my counselor and told her where she could shove her advice. I called her a two-faced hypocrite, but I stayed and I fought through it and I fought DCFS, but I didn't fight them by arguing with them. About halfway through my program, I realized if they said, you need to go to outpatient, I knew I needed a year of residential somewhere. If they said you need 12 weeks of parenting classes, I went to a year. I did more than what anybody asked of me. And my probation officer, by the grace of God, let me have that one last chance. And by the time all was said and done, 6 months later, I did get my son back. I was in a program that I put myself into, a religious program in Long Beach. I did a year there and I struggled through it. So whenever I was looking for what do I want to be when I grow up and I'm 37 years old, like asking myself this, right? Like, let me tell you about my job history. I worked 2 months at Subway, 2 different times. You know, I was really good at my job. My job was doing more of what you had, you know, and you let me stay with you because, you know, I was sweet and I cleaned and I was, you know, hospitable in your own house. I made people feel good about helping me out. And then when I got to college at Long Beach City College, and I was like, well, I'll do social work. Like, that seems like a good idea. Like, you know, I want to help people. And then somebody in my very first social work class started talking about Fred Brown. And my teacher was like, oh my gosh, I teach there. Well, she didn't talk like that. Anybody remember Pam Ennis? Yeah. Woo! She's she's a character. Woo! She was a character. I loved having her classes. Anyway, she talked about Fred Brown Recovery Services, where she worked. She talked about doing the smoking cessation class, and she, in her classes, her number one thing was you need to pay attention to the details. It's not about the content of the information you're learning. It's about learning to pay attention to the details. And I said, have I been paying attention to the details of my life and what I want to do? Because I spent my whole entire life living off of people and not giving anything back, doing some dishes. That's about it. And I said, this is what I want to do. I want to work at Fred Brown. So I talked to her and she was like, yeah, you know, like, well, we work with like people who come out of prison. And I was like, ooh, that seems like a good idea to me. Like really helping somebody who suffered, because I've never been to prison, but Lord, for you to come out and try this life without drugs, I mean, that seemed like something I wanted to do with my life, was to help people. So I started off small. I became a counselor in my old program. And I eventually got the opportunity to apply here. And I remember the day. It was November 3rd, the day after my birthday, that Pam Ennis sent me an email directly and said, hey, do you want to apply? On November 3rd of 2021, I looked back at my life and I realized in less than 4 years, I had accomplished a lifetime of goals. How'd I do that? It wasn't about going to no program. It wasn't about staying in a program for a year. There were a lot of things I had to pull together to get pull that off, because a person of my caliber is just not built to succeed. I did not graduate from anything except for rehab up until that point, right? You know, that was my accomplishment. I had my graduation certificate from Floss and Lewis. How did I get to that point? Well, I did it by changing everything. I changed everything. I got rid of everything, even my old clothes. The only thing I kept was my son. My two boys. I got two boys. I got a boy who just turned 18 today. He's in boot camp for the Marines. Woo! Yeah. Hoorah! Yeah, I heard you. And then I got my 6-year-old who's with my sister in Atlanta. And he is just a trip. He is fabulous. My Lord, I am so glad I fought hard tooth and nail to get that little boy back, and he's all mine, free and clear. That's what it's all about. But I did it with a group of people. I surrounded myself with people, and I picked up people along the way that make it easier to go through those hard days. Because if you think I don't go through some hard days, oh Lord, you are mistaken. There is no such thing as recovered in this program. We are in recovery. And I choose to be grateful. I choose to be grateful on the days when I'm acting like a bitch, because I got a bug up my ass, because I'm still a fallible, flawed human being who has feelings and still deals with residual trauma and still deals with those uncomfortable feelings that come whenever little thoughts hit my head. Oh, you did it for your little baby, but you couldn't do it for your big boy. You know, no guilt. I rebuke you. And then I call somebody. You know, I don't need 1,000 best friends, but I have a lot of really good friends. A lot of good friends that when I go to a meeting, even though I might not know, not a single one of them, they'll listen to me and share my pain so that I don't have to carry that burden. Because I walked in the doors with 2 tons of bullshit. I really did. But every time I came to a meeting, every time I worked a step, every time I hit my knees, every time I was of service, I gave some of that weight away. And people gladly take it because we share it together. You know, we can do together what we could never do alone. I sat in misery by myself in my own prison by myself. You guys opened the gates for me. And even though you still at the beginning or mid stage, I don't know where you are in your recovery, but I have only today. I woke up at 6:30-ish, no, 6:39. I hit the snooze button. It's 7:30 now. It's about 13 hours almost. Anybody who got up earlier than me has more time than me. That's not mine. I stole that from somebody when I got my 3 years. I heard it. I said, that's right. But it's really important to remember that. You know, I just happened to put a few more days together than other people, but I still have a lot less days put together than other people. My sister has 11 years of recovery. We have reconnected. Well, we never connected. My sister and I were like, when I was a kid, but now we're like, woo! And she FaceTime all the time, you know. And all those things that I asked from my higher power, who I call God, He's given it to me. And not just what I asked for, but even more. In the past 6 years, I went from being a high school dropout with no work history to being able to keep the same job and like, you know, get some raises and like, you know, moving up. And I don't want to brag, but I was valedictorian in my graduating class last year. Yay! I hope that part of my speech like just buzzed out on YouTube. Anyway, no, but I was. And you know, my dad, who stopped speaking to me when I lost my first son to his dad, has asked me to come and move home with him so that I can help take care of him and my stepmom in their last years. And I have this amazing tribe that I've created out here, and it's so hard to leave, but because there are places like Fred Brown where the mission is about, I remember in my interview, Roxy said, she said, I take patient complaints very seriously. And if there is an issue, we will address it. She said, it is about the patients, it is not about you. She said, we are a team, we work to help the people who come to us for help. I mean, that's paraphrasing, not your words, but like, that's how I remember it. And I was like, yes, this is where I want to be. I want to be somewhere where we struggle for the patient, struggle alongside the patient, you know, because the fact of the matter is you're going to struggle. You are, but we're here to show you how to do that. And part of it is by doing it together. You see how you guys get along in your houses and you have this camaraderie and it's easy to get through these days together? Don't lose that. Like, find people to struggle with for the rest of your days. It is so important that you're not carrying that burden by yourself. Because if you're carrying it by yourself, it's going to get heavy, and then you're going to look for things to make you feel less uncomfortable. My prayer for all of you is that even if this isn't the time that you get it, that you will get it. And that you will like be able to realize your own dreams. Because the fact of the matter is, whatever you're dreaming for yourself right now doesn't compare to what you can get if you put half the work into your recovery as you did to staying high. So with that, I hope you got something out of it, but thank you so much for letting me be up here. It's been an honor.